I think it's time everyone knows, he said into the microphone at the charity gala, his arm slipping from my waist as hundreds of eyes turned toward me. This engagement was a mistake, he added calmly, like he was correcting a minor accounting error. The room gasped, flashes went off, and someone whispered my name like it was already a headline. I stood there in my silk sari, realizing he hadn't just broken up with me. He had chosen the most public way to humiliate me. He leaned closer and muttered, "Don't react, you'll embarrass yourself," as if the damage wasn't already done. I looked at him and said quietly, "You already embarrassed the wrong person." People waited for tears or shouting, and when I gave them neither, the silence unsettled them. I simply stepped back, folded my hands, and let him stand alone under the chandelier. That was the moment I understood something important. Humiliation only works if you carry it. I decided to put it down and let it stay where it belonged with him. As I walked away, I heard someone ask him, "Is this a joke?" And his laugh came too quickly, too sharp. I didn't turn back, because the moment you look, you invite explanation. At home, Ma pressed a glass of water into my hands and said, "Public shame is heavy." I took a sip and replied, "Only if I carry it." By morning, messages poured in, some sympathetic, some curious, some quietly thrilled. I read them all and said to myself, noted, because patterns begin in reactions. 2 days later, he called and said, "You're being very calm about this." Like calm was a provocation. I answered, "I already understood what you needed an audience to say." That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, slowly undoing my bangles, listening to the echo of his words in the ballroom. My fingers trembled just a little, anger, disbelief, and something like pride all tangled, but I refused to let them show. He thinks he broke me. He has no idea how calm I can be. The next morning, my phone buzzed endlessly. I opened a message from a friend. "I can't believe he did that to you." I stared at it, biting my lip, and typed back, "I noticed, that's all." It felt almost delicious the way people assumed I was defeated. At the board luncheon, I caught his eye across the room. He tried that smile, the one he thinks wins people over. I sipped my water, letting it sit on my tongue just long enough for him to feel the weight of my calm. Someone asked me, "Are you really okay?" And I smiled faintly. "I'm observing," I said. Their eyebrows rose. He shifted uncomfortably. He leaned close at one point, whispering, "You're too composed. Don't let this slip." I kept my gaze steady and replied, "It already has your story, not mine." His jaw tightened ever so slightly. I noticed the way people started asking him questions, not me. It was subtle, almost invisible. But my chest lifted anyway. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just waits quietly. Later, as I walked past the gala tables, I caught a server's eye. "He's never this nervous with anyone else," she thought, probably out loud. I smiled faintly, pretending I didn't notice, letting the tension spread just a little more. His cousin hovered near me, laughing too brightly at nothing. I watched her hand twitch near her fork and realized, innocence is easy to fake when you're used to hiding the truth. He tried guilt that evening, saying, "After everything I did," and I almost laughed. Instead, I simply nodded. "Yes, I remember," and let the silence linger. His words felt hollow against it. At the wedding in Udaipur, he cornered me by the marble steps, and my stomach did that little flip it always does in moments like this. "Why are you so cold?" he demanded. I adjusted my dupatta, steadying my voice, "Because warmth is earned," and walked away before he could argue. I could feel whispers following me through the crowd, some questioning, some impressed. I didn't care. My attention was on the way my heels clicked against the marble, counting each step as a quiet victory I alone understood. The next morning, I read the headlines, each one trying to twist my silence into weakness. I closed the paper and murmured, "They can't touch me if I don't react," he called, voice wavering. "Why aren't you upset?" he asked. I answered softly, "I already lived through it." "You're the one still acting." At the office, I asked, "Are the audit reports finalized?" His cousin laughed a little too quickly. I watched her fingers tighten around her pen, the first crack appearing. That evening I poured tea and noticed my reflection in the window. Calm looked good on me. I decided to let it stay that way. He sent a message. I don't understand you anymore. I typed back. You never really did. Satisfaction is quiet, I realized, almost imperceptible but deep. At the next gala, I moved through the crowd with measured steps. People whispered, eyes darting to see if I'd crumble. I didn't. I let them lean into my silence. His cousin lingered near me again. Too sweet. Too perfect. I kept my distance, letting her realize that friendliness without honesty doesn't survive scrutiny. He tried one last public gesture, offering flowers. I declined politely, inwardly counting the seconds until his composure slipped in front of everyone. Control needs reaction to survive. I offered none. I felt the power shift silently, like air moving through an open window. During a panel discussion, I mentioned ethical leadership without naming him. He flinched, realizing he had become the example without noticing. Silence can feel weak until results arrive. Mine had already arrived. The cousin moved abroad, claiming a fresh start. Distance doesn't erase habit, but it delays the fallout. At the Madurai temple, I lit a diya and whispered a quiet prayer. Clarity matters more than vengeance, I reminded myself. He sent a flurry of messages, emotions swinging from anger to fear. I archived them all, watching the pattern rather than reacting. Work expanded. Invitations grew warmer. Every time I showed up, my presence mattered more than any apology ever could. Journalists asked about the breakup. I smiled and said, "We've both moved on." Their surprise was almost delicious. He started missing deadlines, losing partners, his confidence eroding quietly. I felt no joy, only quiet validation. At a cousin's engagement, I laughed freely for the first time in months. The air tasted lighter. Freedom is subtle but addictive. Ma said, patience isn't weakness. I nodded, finally feeling it in my bones. He sent a private apology, voice steady but hollow. I accepted without warmth and closed the door behind it. Forgiveness can feel like silence, and this time it did. Peace settled without ceremony. The cousin's letters arrived, pleading ignorance. I read them, wished her well, and placed them aside. Accountability isn't optional. At a corporate retreat, I was elected chair unanimously. It felt strange, commanding respect without raising my voice. He congratulated me publicly. I smiled politely. Applause sounded different when it was earned, not demanded. I wore simple ivory that night. Confidence doesn't need ornamentation, I thought, watching the reflections in the glass. Friends asked how I stayed so calm. I whispered, I listen longer than I react, and they nodded as if it were a revelation. At a temple puja, I handed sweets to children. Their small smiles reminded me why bitterness only weighs you down. His name disappeared from conversations. Absence has power too, I realized. I noticed rooms adjusting subtly, people leaning toward reliability rather than charm. Power gravitates to those who show consistency. The cousin's scandal abroad made headlines. Patterns, I noted, travel faster than excuses. I felt no triumph, only relief. Indifference is a quieter victory than revenge. At a university talk, a student asked, "How do you stay resilient?" I said, "Observe first. Let others reveal themselves." Silence collects information others discard. Patience can feel slow, but it teaches the loudest lessons. He sent one final message wishing me happiness. I wished him growth in return and meant it. Growth is slower than apology, harder than charm. Few pursue it willingly. My calendar filled with work aligned to values, not people. Alignment brings energy back where drama steals it. At a winter wedding, I danced without checking reflections. Liberation feels like forgetting who is watching. Ma said, "Love will come differently next time." I believed her. Discernment had sharpened hope. Boundaries stayed firm but gentle. Flexibility without collapse is the kind of strength that feels effortless. If you're listening, remember this. Observe patterns, honor your boundaries, and let consequences educate quietly. Power often whispers. Don't wait for it to shout.